A boy was eating when he suddenly bit into a tooth. He realized it wasn't his own tooth, but when he checked his bowl again, he discovered there was an eye inside. He was shocked and told others about the eye in his bowl. The students were terrified when they heard the news. Soon, many others discovered similar things in their meal trays. Police detectives quickly arrived to inspect the kitchen. From the bone fragments pulled out of the iron pot, they could confirm the victim was male. Based on the degree of bone deterioration, he appeared to be a middle-aged man in his 50s, definitely not a student from the school. Looking at the pile of bone fragments that had been extracted, the investigators determined the ingredients likely came from canned food. Sure enough, at the canning factory, they found piles of bone fragments. They poured all recent batches of canned goods from the factory onto examination tables and picked out the crushed bone pieces one by one. At this point, a careful investigator made an even more startling discovery. There was a surgical incision mark on the victim's skull. Only a few doctors could perform such precise surgery. Based on these characteristics, they eventually identified the victim as a chemist and food scientist. Following this lead, they went to the victim's workplace. When an employee heard about the man's death, she actually knew he had died at the canning factory. It turned out the woman had an excellent sense of smell. She not only detected the canned food odor on the bone fragments, but also smelled disinfectant. Combining their identities and purposes, she understood the man had died at the canning factory. Strangely, this batch of canned goods contained significantly more spices than previous batches. The production line was generally automated, and spice quantities were pre-allocated, so this batch couldn't have been over-seasoned by accident. Could the killer have deliberately added extra spices to mask the taste of human flesh? They quickly questioned the factory manager, who revealed he had invited the victim to serve as a factory consultant, with all authority in the victim's hands. They discovered threatening emails sent to the victim's computer. The man who sent the emails was soon brought to the interrogation room. He claimed the victim frequently delayed delivery schedules, and in anger, he had sent those threatening messages. The medical examiner found a penetrating wound on the inner edge of the collarbone that occurred before death. From the marks, the attack came from a frontal downward angle, which would sever the subclavian artery, so the victim likely died from massive blood loss. Under a 400 times microscope, they found the wound was circular, resembling a needle puncture. However, the wound size was too large to match medical syringes. The woman suddenly thought of meat injection needles used for curing. Based on this theory, Angela immediately created a 3D reconstruction. Since the tail end of meat injection needles is open, when the killer punctured the subclavian artery, blood would have sprayed out from the needle's tail end, covering the killer's head and body. They also found horse bones in the canned food. Horse meat was strictly prohibited. Perhaps someone was planning to add horse meat to the canned goods, but when the victim discovered this, he prepared to report the company's illegal activities, ultimately leading to his murder. The canning factory owner was soon brought to the interrogation room. Faced with evidence of horse meat, the CEO refused to admit guilt. According to federal forensic accounting investigations, the man had purchased beef from a slaughterhouse in Mexico. However, upon visiting this facility, they found it didn't produce beef at all, only horse meat. Even now, the CEO still refused to confess. Under ultraviolet light examination, massive blood residue appeared on the man's head. The evidence was now ironclad.